I've always enjoyed driving. When first learning, I was eager to drive everywhere. One of the first things I learned after hitting the road is that some people just can't drive. Slowly, I noticed more and more that people would rather multitask than focus solely on the road. I've been cut off by teens on their phone. I've had to slam on my brakes because the driver in front of me decided to look in the back seat for God knows what. I've even had trash thrown out the window of the car in front of me only to land directly on my windshield. Above all this though, the one sight that truly puts me on edge when I'm driving is that of an elderly citizen behind the wheel. In a 1997 National Highway Traffic Safety Administration study, older people made up 9% of the population, but accounted for 14% of all fatalities and 17% of all pedestrian fatalities. It is the elderly's privilege to operate motor vehicles, the same as any other age group. It is also the United States' obligation to ensure the safety of all motorists. The elderly should be required to recertify their licenses in order to maintain their motor privileges. Therefore, I propose that the United States government enact a law that puts in place screenings that will require citizens over the age of 70 to requalify for their driver's license if driving abilities are suspected to be inadequate. These drivers are not only a danger to themselves, but also a danger to the rest of us. According to the NHTSA, Fatal Accident Reporting System, or FARS, of fatal fatalities involving older drivers, 75% involve another vehicle. This means that when they are in an accident, it is more than likely that someone else is involved. The FARS also includes statistics that state that while only 55% of adult vehicle occupants ages 18 to 69 involved in fatal crashes were using restraints at the time of the crash, 70% of fatal crashes involved older occupants were using restraints. This means that although the elderly were wearing their seatbelts, they had a higher percentage of dying from that seatbelt than age groups lower than that. But why are the elderly so much more likely to cause accidents in the first place? Well, with old age comes the problems of a deteriorating body. According to the article, Senior Driving Safety Steps, Safety Tips, Warning Signs, and Knowing When to Stop, aging tends to result in a reduction of strength, coordination, and flexibility, which can have a major impact on your ability to safely control the car. For example, pain or stiffness in the neck can make it hard to look over your shoulders to change lanes or look left and right at intersections to check for other traffic or pedestrians. Leg pain can make it difficult to move your foot from the gas to the brake pedal. Diminished arm strength can make it hard to turn the steering wheel quickly and effectively. As reaction times are slowed down with age, you may be slower to spot vehicles emerging from side streets and driveways, or to realize that the vehicle ahead of you has slowed or stopped. Keeping track of so many road signs, signals, and markings, as well as the other traffic and pedestrians, can also become more difficult as you lose the ability to effectively divide your attention between multiple activities. These conditions will continue to be prevalent in licensed elderly drivers as long as there is not a screening process in place to weed out these conditions. These licensed drivers will continue to pose a threat to road safety if no action is taken by the government. According to the NHTSA, representing 9% of the population in 1997, the 70 and older group grew 2.1 times faster from 1987 to 1997 than the total population. In 1986, older drivers were 7% of licensed drivers. In 86, they were 7% of licensed drivers. In 1996, they were 19% of licensed drivers. According to the Institute of Civil Justice, by 2025, drivers 65 and older will represent 25% of the driving population. These statistics say that the percent of elderly citizens in the United States will continue to grow, which explains the increase in the percent of licensed elderly drivers. It stands to say then that if the problem is not corrected, then the number of accidents caused by elderly drivers would also increase at this same high rate. I propose that the United States government enact a law that puts in place screenings that would require citizens over the age of 70 to requalify for their driver's license if driving abilities are suspected to be inadequate. The first step in the process would be to set up these screenings in as convenient a way as possible. I think that in addition to renewing your tags, you would also be required to take part in this screening. The screening would consist of tests that would test a person's reaction time and basic movements performed while driving. If a person fails this screening, their license is to be suspended until they have been cleared by a physician. Their physician would check based on the specific guidelines if the patient is able to operate a motor vehicle. There are programs in a few states that have already enacted portions of my plan. In California, which requires retesting for anyone involved in a fatal crash or 3 or more crashes in 1 year, requires drivers over 70 to retest if they are involved in two or more crashes in 1 year. Although my plan would not have the stipulation of already being in a crash, this seems to be working for California, who tied for the fourth lowest fatal crash rate in the elderly among all the states at 9%. Pennsylvania is one of the states that has a physician's reporting law, requiring physicians to report disabilities that may affect driving ability. Although there are no statistics directly correlating this with a lower crash rate among the elderly, it can only be beneficial to have physicians aiding in this process, for they have the best understanding of the driver's health and capabilities. With my plan in place, the roads will become a safer place. Drivers can drive with the confidence that only those who still possess the ability to correctly operate a motor vehicle are on the road. Some people say that there are disadvantages to my solution. Some advocates say that requiring the elderly to recertify improperly discriminates against them. Although this plan does target the elderly, it leaves room to grow. I would also in later years propose that this screening be added to include other dangerous drivers such as teens. This plan targets, and when I say that, I do mean adding more stipulations that would target the specific qualities that teens possess that cause them to be bad drivers. This plan targets dangerous drivers, and the fact that certain age groups have higher crash rates should be used as an excuse to act instead of one not to. My solution is the right course of action. Although I do applaud California for taking steps to address this issue, their solution only helps after the accident has already occurred. I believe in order to make progress with this issue, you must stop these drivers before they cause an accident. The growing rate of elderly citizens and the subsequent growing accident rate caused by these citizens needs to be addressed by the United States government. By requiring elderly citizens to be screened and retested by physicians if this screening is failed, we can reduce the rate of these accidents. As I said before, driving has always been an enjoyment of mine, but having to constantly worry about problematic drivers is not. With nothing in place to weed out these dangerous drivers, one day something I enjoy so much could be the last thing I enjoy at all. But as long as my solution is put in place, then the sight of an elderly driver would no longer put me on edge, and I will be able to enjoy driving for many more days to come.
Questions or comments? So why don't states currently have any type of system besides the two you mentioned, California and Pennsylvania, to try and deal with elderly drivers?
The main reason that I came across in my research was advocates who, like I stated in my speech, advocates who say that it's discrimination to put these type of restrictions on a particular age group. That if you would enact something like this, you would have to do it across the board, or it would be pure discrimination.
But it wouldn't be discriminatory because discrimination applies to rights, not privileges, right?
Yes, I did use the word privilege in my speech, but it is, you can also trade that in to be a right to drive. Everyone has their right to drive as long as they meet all the qualifications. But
anytime you place a limitation, such as qualifications, you have to be a certain age. Now most states require you to either have completed a driver's education course or to have had X number of driving hours behind the wheel with an already qualified driver. Anytime you place restrictions like that on something, that indicates it's a privilege. It's not an automatic right. You don't, when you turn 16, you don't get a driver's license. You have to go complete a test to show that you are qualified to obtain that privilege to drive. If it was a right, you could start driving when you were 10 or 5, as long as you could hit the wheel.
True. I don't understand all of the aspects of these advocates, but I do know that they feel that by placing this to strictly conform to people over the age of 70 is discriminatory. That's what the advocates say.
I was curious as to why you chose the age of 70 as opposed to 65 or 60.
Originally, I actually did choose 60, but most of the research that I did pertained to the age group above 70. So
as being the second most dangerous.
Exactly, behind teens. So that's why I decided that this policy should be enacted to that age group in particular, 70 and above.
Okay. And I'll make sure I understand. Your initial solution is to set up screening programs.
Right.
And at those screening programs, you'll test strength, coordination, flexibility.
Well, those tests will come later. The screening is what I didn't want to do in my proposal was make it problematic for this age group that could operate a motor vehicle successfully. So to make it so that it's when you renew your tags and have a simple screening there, that if the screener feels necessary that you should be further screened or have the physician check you out, then you will go through that process. But the original screening would just consist of making sure that you can perform the basic perform the basic abilities that's needed to drive, such as just can you move your leg to the gas pedal, can you successfully turn the wheels, things of that nature.
Okay. Other questions or comments? I did have one. If they can't pass the screening, and then later they can't pass the physician check,
then they lose their license.
Then they lose their license and can no longer drive.
Yes.
Now, why will that stop them from driving?
Well, this is just, it was more to deter them, but if they still feel the need to drive after that with no license, then they're breaking laws within itself. And they should be caught by the current laws that's in place for people who drive without licenses and punished accordingly.
I can see someone's curmudgeon-y old grandpa saying, I've been driving since 1914, by God, there ain't nobody gonna take my ability to drive away from me.
Well, I would hope that their families, knowing that they no longer possess a license, wouldn't allow their elderly family members to drive.
All right, now let's say that this person fails it, loses his license. Can he go back tomorrow and get a test again?
No.
How long does he have to wait?
I would, the renewal, I would say when you have to renew your license, so your birthday month, 1 year, is when you will be able to come back and try to renew it.
You would at least lose it for that 1 year period.
Exactly.
Okay. Other questions? Okay.